Hello, and welcome to Alone Together, the making of Very Truly Yours, Gilbert and Sullivan. I am Gaydon Wren, the writer, producer, and director of this unusual project. It has taken a long time to put it together, about 5 months, but by now you have presumably seen the movie, and maybe you are wondering, how did that happen? So we thought we would take a few minutes to explain to you a few things. And when I say we, I had hoped that producer and technical director Sarah Holliday would be joining us, because without her, this project really would not have been possible. Her skills at video editing are almost magical, and without her ability to make the impossible seem real, this entire project...
Okay, so we should... You started without me.
Well, you weren't here. I wasn't sure you were coming.
Well, how far did you get?
Well, no, not far. I was just saying hello.
Well, okay. Hello. I'm Sarah Elliott Holliday, producer and technical director. Glad you could join us.
Like a lot of online projects that got started in 2020, this one was about finding something to do other than what we really wanted to be doing, which was staging opera for live audiences. 2020 was the first year since 1953 that the Gilbert and Sullivan Light Opera Company of Long Island did not produce an opera. We were well into rehearsals on the Mikado when the pandemic came along, everything shut down suddenly, and that was it.
We're no different in that respect from everybody else. Between jobs and families and extracurricular activities, I don't know if there's anybody in the country whose year wasn't hugely disrupted. I mean, hardly anybody on the whole planet. After the initial shock wore off, we started thinking about what we might do instead. Doing theater, singing, acting, directing, making music isn't just something we do, it's something we are. And who you are doesn't go away just because you're wearing a mask or socially distancing. The company couldn't do the Mikado, but that didn't mean we couldn't do anything.
Very Truly Yours, Gilbert and Sullivan came to mind. This is a play that I wrote back in 1995. The company gave it its world premiere that same year and played it around Long Island for the next few years. Since then, it has had an off-Broadway run and been produced by various companies around the country. Because it involves no sets, costumes, or lighting, it seemed like something that we might be able to do on tape with everybody working from their own homes. And because it has lots of small parts rather than a few big parts, it was the kind of thing that everybody in the company could participate in. Not only the people who had been scheduled to do the Mikado, but people who had been in previous company productions as well.
And after all, if everybody's working from home, more or less, there's no real limit on how many people you can have or where they can work from. 8 of our cast members are from outside Long Island, including people working from upstate New York, from Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. But thanks to the internet, they're all right around the corner. We'd actually done this once before, just not online. In 2003, celebrating the company's 50th anniversary season, we did a reunion production of this same show with a cast of 48 people from throughout the company's history, gathering in Long Beach for a one-day show, rehearse in the afternoon, perform at night. It was really great. It was a really memorable experience.
It was. So I pitched it to Sarah, and she said done. And we pitched it to the board, and they said done. And we asked Tom Shepard, and he said done. So then in November, we sent an email to everybody we could find who'd ever been in a company production, and 51 of them said done. So all that was left was for us to figure out how it could be done. And when I say us, I mean her.
I mean, a lot of us have been developing new skills during the pandemic, some of us because we want to, and some of us because we have to. In my case, I'm the head of events for a library in Manhattan, and of course, we haven't been able to gather an audience in a room since early March of 2020, so I've been running my own crash course in how to stage online events, which in turn has led to video editing and all kinds of fancy stuff that I had no idea about prior to all this, but now it's what I do every day.
We already had a script, so I wrote out an elaborate staging book explaining all the things that I wanted to have happen.
Like, say, Sarah materializes out of nowhere.
And then I gave it to Sarah and said, here, figure out how to make all this happen.
So the first thing to do was to get organized. Other than the encore, this show has 133 readings and 40 songs, which is 173 separate pieces. You could think of them as scenes in a play, but since we're doing this with social distancing, every song involves at least 2 separate tracks, one for the singer and one for the piano, each of which has to be recorded separately. If it's a trio, it has 4 tracks, 3 singers and the piano. If it's Try We Lifelong, which is a quintet and a chorus.
And the chorus is 8 people, 2 sopranos, a mezzo, an alto, 2 tenors, a baritone, and a bass.
And it's 14 tracks. Each track is a separate unit, so we're talking about a total of 251 pieces.
Count the encore, Hail Poetry, and it's more than 300 tracks.
I put together a massive Excel spreadsheet with a separate line for each of the 173 pieces and a listing of exactly who was involved in each one. Different colors, different, italics, everything meant something. The most important thing was to keep this list updated so we knew what we had and what we didn't have. With 53 people making 251 tracks, if we let things get out of control, we never get back in control. An important part of this was establishing a dedicated Dropbox folder for everybody to submit their material instead of sending us 251 separate emails. With the Dropbox, I could just check it once a day, update my spreadsheet, and have an ongoing tally of what was what.
So we had the organization and we had the people. The only question left was, what would we be asking these people to do? We started by designing a detailed instruction sheet, or rather, 2 sheets, one for the readings and a different one for the songs. We tried to anticipate anything that could go wrong, anything that could be misunderstood, anything that would get in the way of performers doing what they do best, which is performing. Now, the readings were fairly straightforward. Some of the people memorized their lines, others read them off of cue cards, but everybody spoke their readings into the cameras on their computers or phones, and then sent the resulting file to our Dropbox. Easy enough.
Of course, with a bunch of people like this, once you open the door, all kinds of creativity ensues. We didn't tell people to do so, but many of our readers decided to opt for props to heighten the effect. Many of them decided to use costumes for the same purpose. One even took a 2-month pause to grow a full set of Victorian-style whiskers.
This is an opera company, so there's a lot of great singing in this movie.
Oh, you said the word.
Oh, so what? Nobody's going to freak out about it now. It's done. We made a movie. Deal with it.
Jesse Waldinger, long shot candidate for Best Supporting Actor.
There's a lot of great singing in this movie, but some of my favorite moments are from the readings. I'm constantly amazed by the talent and imagination of our company membership. Now, the readings weren't easy. A lot of people had to do multiple takes, and we had to send a few back for retakes because somebody bobbled a word. The songs, though, that was a whole other kettle of fish.
If you look at the show,
If you look at the movie,
you might think that the singers are working karaoke style, singing to recorded accompaniment.
which is originally what I thought they would be doing. But then, for the first of many, many times, Sarah said, that wouldn't work.
You could conceivably do that with a simple solo, one singer and the piano, but it makes for a quality issue. The voice would be a recording, but the piano would be a recording of a recording, and you'd have all kinds of differences in volume and clarity and whatever, and there wouldn't be anything I, as the editor, could do about it, because they'd both be on the same track.
It would be even worse doing a quintet karaoke style, with the soprano recording over the piano, the mezzo recording over the soprano, and so forth. By the time you got to the end, the bass would be recording over a recording of a recording of a recording of a recording of a recording.
You could have each of them make a separate recording over the piano, and then I could combine them, but then it would sound like 5 singers accompanied by 5 pianos.
Or Try We Lifelong, accompanied by 13 pianos.
Karaoke would leave me with no way of adjusting the balance between voice and piano, or between the various voices. And it would mean that I couldn't do anything to tweak a recording to cover a late entrance, a missed word, a little piano fluff, or whatever, because any change I made to one part would change them all. The only way this could possibly work is to have every part on a separate track. The way you do that is what you might call secret karaoke. You have the singer listen on headphones or an earbud. That gives me 2 first-generation tracks, which lets me balance the volume levels, drop out an early entrance, even subtly slow down or speed up one part of one track to tighten the alignment. The number of things I can do to enhance the finished project increases enormously. But then the issue is synchronizing them. We think of a note of music as either being there or not being there. But actually every tone of a voice or an instrument is a cluster of waves, an interweaving of tones, overtones, undertones, foretones, aftertones, reverberance, and so forth. Here's what a hand clap looks like, broken down into a wavelength. It's pretty much binary, it's either there or not there. But here's what a musical chord looks like, broken down into a wavelength. As you can imagine, trying to align the wavelength of a voice and the wavelength of a piano can be really, really difficult. Pretty soon you're talking about microseconds, and the problem is that in most people, the ear is much subtler than the eye. That's why you can hear a mosquito that you can't see, for example. You can line up two tracks so they appear to the eye to be perfectly in sync, but if they're a few microseconds off, the ear hears it and it sounds terrible. Imagine trying to do this with 251 different tracks, and you can see how easy it would be to drive yourself crazy.
The answer, as it turned out, had nothing to do with music. The spoken word is a lot less acoustically rich than the sung word. It's much closer to being binary, there or not there. Now here's a wavelength breakdown of the words one little bit. So, what if, instead of trying to synchronize the music of the singer and the piano, you had them both talk at the beginning of the recording? First Tom Shepard at the keyboard, and then the singer joining in with the tom that she heard on her earphone. If you do that, and if each person records the whole song in one take, you can synchronize the entire song right at the beginning, using words instead of music. And that is a snap.
Well, it's easier anyway. That's why the original piano parts all sounded like this.
1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4.
And the original video of each song started out like this.
2, 2, 3, 4. I am so proud.
So my initial assembly of each song would look and sound like this.
1, 2, 3, 4.
2, 2, 3, 4. I am so proud.
Then, having the entire song synchronized all at once, I could go back and cut off the count-off that I'd used to do the synchronization in the first place.
But there were humorous aspects as well. Because we watched a lot of the videos part by part as they came in, and because the singers had to record the whole song in one take, beginning with the initial count-off, we saw a lot of tracks that looked like this.
2, 3, 2, 2, 3. Yes, Brit!
The singers were on camera from the count-off onward, so in ensemble numbers they had to react to the other singers, none of whom, of course, they could hear. So they had to learn the words of the other singers' parts so they could hear those words in their heads and react appropriately at the right moment, with only the piano parts to guide them.
Here's Patty Carrasquillo singing a verse of Sir Rupert Murgatroyd, accompanied by our all-star chorus.
With fear he'd make them quake, he'd duck them in his lake, he'd break their bones with sticks and stones and burn them at the stake.
This was he much enjoyed, did Rupert destroyed.
But here's the way the videos from our all-star chorus looked before I added Patty and the piano to the mix. There were even some tracks where the singers were ultimately going to be invisible to the audience, so they could do whatever they felt like doing on the visual.
Try we lifelong, take 1. Two, 3, 4.
We are telling you all this because we want you to appreciate how much time and effort our cast put into these seemingly effortless recordings and how ridiculously talented they all are. This is a show in which a lot of people appeared on camera for only a few seconds or for a single 3-minute song, but I don't know that I've ever directed a show which had so much talent and so much creativity at work, or rather at play. Now, when you see these people on stage, you're seeing the finished product, and it's wonderful. But we don't let you into the rehearsal hall or backstage, so you don't necessarily understand what it took to do that. But this is a movie, and we get to have some special features. So if you're like me, you'll appreciate the performers all the more for knowing what they had to do to create the magic that you see on screen.
It wasn't all hard work, though.
Oh, far from it. We had to give up so much to make this project happen. The ability to rehearse together, to interact with each other on stage, to interact with the audience, to dress things up with costumes and props and scenery. But we gained some things, too. From the beginning, Sarah and I were resolved to see how we could have fun with the new capabilities that came with all of those concessions to the new reality. For one thing, because we were making a movie, we had the advantage of a close-up, which is something you routinely have in movies, but never on stage, unless maybe you happen to be sitting at front row center. But even then, you might not enjoy this song on stage as much as you do on screen.
If you're like me and you spend half your day in Zoom meetings these days, you probably watched our introduction with the 4 kids and said, boy, they must have the most powerful servers in the world because my Zoom meetings are always plagued with time delay pauses and stops and starts and all that stuff. Well, we don't have any powerful servers.
Oh, far from it.
But we did have the ability to edit out all the little pauses and create the illusion of a real-time Zoom meeting. We also had the advantage of our audience knowing that we were all in our separate places, which gave us the opportunity now and then to play with your expectations. Like many of the songs in the show, that one relied on our knowing in advance where the frames would be placed and giving that information to the actors so they could play in the right direction. We also had the ability to be literally in 2 places at one time, as Chris Jurek does in this song as a member of our all-star chorus backing up himself.
You have no idea how long it took to get this next one right, but it was worth it. That was done by having them do the entire song twice, resetting the stage between takes and doing interlocking pieces of the song each time. Now, this would be way easier to do on stage, but there would be nothing cool about it. Speaking of cool, here's a concept video that we didn't actually use, but it demonstrated what you could do with the benefit of a camera and editing, which you could never do on stage.
When the foeman bears his steel,
Tarantara, tarantara,
we uncomfortable feel,
tarantara,
and we find the wisest thing
tarantara, tarantara.
is to slap our chests and sing tarantara. For when threatened with a mutes,
Tarantara, tarantara,
and your heart is in your boots,
tarantara.
there is nothing brings it round like the trumpet's martial sound, like the trumpet's martial sound. Tarantara, 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 tarantara.
So those are some of the ways we did it. We hope you've enjoyed this little peek behind the curtain.
One last thought. This project seems like something bizarre and unusual, something that the company had never done before, but it's actually the same thing that we always do. Now and then we do get to do an opera on a big stage with fancy lighting and elaborate sets and costumes, but we are a touring company, always have been. For most of our shows, the audience isn't sitting in theater seats, they're sitting in folding chairs or on the grass. We've taken a tiny stage at the Peninsula Library and turned it into the Tower of London. We've done a show during a raging windstorm at Phelps Lane Park in Babylon and turned it into the Court of the Exchequer. We have climbed up on the altar area at Sag Harbor Presbyterian Church and turned it into Ebenezer Scrooge's office. What we do is we adapt. That's the nature of theater. That's the nature of art. That's what it means to be human. Human beings have made their homes in the Arctic Circle, in the Sahara Desert, in tropical rainforests, in caves and cliffs in New Mexico and Syria. And in all those places, they have made their homes into art galleries, into concert halls, and yes, into theaters. So we've made our homes into theaters for your amusement. We thank you for coming and hope we can meet in person one of these days.